It's showtime, folks. Enjoy the show.
Good day. How you doing, mates? Hey there, Bruce.
He's the one that can get away with that. Yeah.
Is that how you're going to avoid the Irish thing? All right, Bruce, go ahead. Bring us in.
I just did. We're
That
here.
was it? You didn't say Saturday
Do I
matinee.
need more? Saturday matinee. There. That's for Nick. Oh, dear.
I got another thing for Nick. Actually, this is from Nick, and this probably should have been my trailer pick this week. Where you guys stand on Climax? Is this a thing that I need to see? This is what Nick says. Let me just read what Nick says. Oh, also, hi Steve, hi Andy. Good morning.
Good night.
So this is what Nick says in Discord. Just a reminder for American peeps: Climax is released stateside today. It was one of the best movies I saw last year, and whether you're a fan or just curious about checking out a Gaspar Noé film, this would be the best place to start. You guys, it seemes like right up your alley. This is like the spiritual sequel to Suspiria. Am I right?
Is that what it is?
I don't know. I wouldn't see Suspiria. Is this a thing that I should be excited about?
No.
I don't know if you should be excited about it.
Cup of tea, yeah.
I watched the trailer, and there is a part where a dancer has her head on fire. That seems fascinating.
It's probably up my alley. I saw in my Fandango app that it said what movies were coming out this weekend, and this one was listed there. However, it's not playing in any theaters near me. And I've seen the trailer, and I'm intrigued because it looks like it's doing some non-traditional things with sort of storytelling in the format. And so I'm intrigued. I have not seen any of Gaspar Noé's stuff. Because I know he's really in your face, unapologetic with just wanting to make audiences uncomfortable, I think, to challenge them. So it's the one that I've heard of it's the one that goes like backwards. What is it? Irreversible with, it's got the rape scene in the alleyway and then a guy getting his face smashed in with a fire extinguisher. And it's just really brutal. There's another one called Enter the Void. It's like a guy dies, has an out-of-body experience, which I hear is amazing, but I've got to watch In the Name of the Father first before I can get to any of these other things.
That's right.
No.
None of this Gaspar Noé business. We've got work to do.
Well, that was it. The interview that I can think it was on Variety or something. He talks about how he's asked because in the screening that the reporter goes through, 6 or 8 people stand up and leave, and he laughs about that and was upset because usually he's shooting for 25% of who is in the audience. He's counting on them leaving his movie. So it doesn't it doesn't seem like this is a movie that was tailor-made for Pete, but
probably not. Probably not.
I'm curious. It's A24, and now I'm really hosed because I'm trying to catch up on my A24. What do I do about this? My two things are running headlong into one another.
You just be a completionist and gut it out and put yourself through it.
Yes, maybe literally gutting it out with a movie like this. Great, terrific.
He reminds me of. I'm trying to remember what's the director's name who did. Geez, I'm just totally drawing a blank on everything about him. But he's that other really challenging director. He's always like, very not just challenging, making challenging films. He's got that new one with Matt Dillon. But he's also challenging like at festivals and stuff. He's just a very in your face sort of director and unapologetic for the crazy stuff he does. And I hate watching his movies because they're intentionally designed to make you uncomfortable, and it's just not something I enjoy.
Oh, you're talking about the house that Jack built, Lars von Trier.
Lars von Trier, yeah. Ugh.
Yes.
Same type of thing.
Yes, another thing. Yes.
Yeah. Lars von Trier I struggle with. I haven't seen any Gaspar Noé films, so I feel like I owe it to him to at least watch one or two before I make that judgment.
It sounds like this might be the one, Andy. This is the one.
Well, Enter the Void is on my list of things to watch. So I definitely want to check that out. And then I'll probably watch this one because, it's in my A24 list of things to watch. So just like you.
It's because of Canopy. It's because of that service. It's so easy. They're all there.
It
They're
is.
everywhere.
Yes.
A24 surrounds us.
All right.
Yeah.
You want to talk about HBO, Steve?
Do we want to talk about HBO? Yeah, I am really interested to see where things go with HBO in the future now that we have some changes going on over there. I think, everybody knows that Game of Thrones, but if you think about going back to even, I didn't have HBO for a long time when we were first married, so I didn't get to see like Oz, but I mean like The Sopranos, so much original content coming out of HBO over the past like 20 years. And now things are going to change because they got acquired and they are losing sort of I guess he's the CEO now because HBO was bought by AT&T, Time Warner, this whole conglomeration, and people are speculating it's putting pressure on raising the bar, cranking out more content to compete with Netflix, and perhaps Amazon. And when you start pushing out lots of stuff, there's concerns about quality. And I think HBO has managed to, I think about Westworld, of course, Game of Thrones. They have put on, sort of on, what is it, like appointment viewing? Because it's like you got to be there Sunday night when those shows get released. People are showing up, to see these shows, and they have really focused on content. And now with the resignation of Richard Plepler, chairman and CEO of HBO, there's concerns that they're going to get off track. I don't know how you guys, sort of feel about HBO's role with the pressure to, going from cable, subscription thing to, competing with the streaming services.
Well, it's hard to always, excuse me, it's hard to always stay on track. It's hard. You're never going to always have the same people in charge. It's always going to shift.
Oh, sure.
And so it's I guess it's the end of an era, that type of thing. But it doesn't mean it has to be the end of what they've been doing well. However, it does, hearing stuff like that, it does make you wonder if they might be focusing on some issues that might push them into the wrong path, that might lead to some difficult times ahead, because they've been doing pretty well, but it is a different subscription service, and if they are competing against Netflix, how are they going to find a way to manage that? I feel like they've been doing it well, but I don't know. I'm not in those meetings. I wonder if there's more a struggle that they're having with Netflix.
Well, I guess the issue comes from AT&T executive John Stankey, who basically last July told HBO employees there's going to be a lot of work to alter and a change in direction. So he's got a specific. He is. Now that they've acquired HBO, it's not that it's a case of the CEO just hitting a point where it's time to step down. It seems like there's pressure to move HBO in a new direction, and we've got the CEO getting out of the way, and people are speculating that may have been what caused this Plepler to leave, is this push to let's focus on creating more. We're changing direction. I'm like, well, if HBO is doing well with this model, why change it? Again, you've got Disney getting into the streaming area. If that area is becoming crowded, my question is, if HBO has solid footing here with what they're doing, they may be the unique player instead of jumping into the streaming field to compete with Disney. And then we've got Apple is coming out with their own streaming service. Why jump into the crowded pool? Why not stay unique with what they're doing?
Yeah, I think you cut off half of that quote, that Stanky quote, Steve. The next half of that is the really interesting one. He continues after saying he wants to change direction a little bit. I want more hours of engagement. It's not hours a week, and it's not hours a month. We need hours a day. Referring, I'm assuming, to hours a day of people sitting down and watching HBO. I want to HBO and veg is going to be, I think, the new mode. And that makes me a little bit nervous because HBO has always been the premium channel, right? I mean, it's the channel that has the highest quality, not all the things. Netflix has a lot of crap that you gotta sift through. You gotta kind of know what you want. You gotta be willing to wait a little bit, and you just don't have that issue as much, I think, with HBO. I'm one of those HBO because I don't watch it for the movies, because the movies I can get elsewhere.
Yeah.
I watch it for a very few shows, and I also, now that I can turn on and off the service easily, I watch it for Game of Thrones. I watched Oz.
Yeah.
I watch it for just some shows, and so. This is, I don't know, it makes me nervous because if HBO is another place that has all the things, I don't need it.
Yeah, I don't understand this pressure to get to hours of engagement per day. You're getting my whatever 20, if I subscribe through, added on through Hulu, it's like $15 a month. You're getting my $15 a month whether I watch 1 hour a month or 100 hours a month. It doesn't change the revenue stream you get from me. And I guess I can understand breadth of content to get more subscribers. It's something that has always puzzled me with Netflix. It doesn't matter, how many people watch, Stranger Things. If your subscriber base doesn't change the number of people, you can add more shows and they're watching more, but your revenue doesn't increase. And again, this is my big challenge with this model. I guess maybe getting more content, if they're diversifying, getting people to subscribe because, Game of Thrones isn't their thing and neither is, The Wire or Sopranos. That's not their thing. They want to get a new demographic in there. That I could get behind. But just to say we need more engagement per hour per day does not make sense as a business model for me.
It's interesting to see how things are going to shift with that. I'm curious to see what. Yeah, I guess time will tell. We'll have to see what sort of programming they start doing, and if they're going to come up with a glut of material like Netflix has as a way to combat that. I have no idea.
I really hope they don't go after the superhero market, because it seems like every streaming service has tried. You've got Netflix had Marvel, and then we have. DC's has launched their own.
Don't you feel like everyone's going to have to? Because
Yeah.
that's a market. In order for them to gain that crowd, because it's targeting a different age bracket. Some of them are in particular,
Yes.
like younger crowds. If not, because I think that's the thing that HBO has is it's seen as very much an adult channel. Right. Especially if you watch that commercial that they did where, it was all those people it seemed like they were, doing just porn films or whatever, as these actors were talking to their family members, telling them the story. And they're like, I think you're in a porn. No, it's HBO. Oh, okay. That whole thing. And I think that's what HBO is perpetually going to be fighting, is that look that people have. And until they shift and make it something where it's not just for grownups, I think it's going to be harder for them to find that level of competition, especially if they're looking for a daily sort of engagement.
Yeah, I guess it's just keeping the quality there. And I just wonder with what Netflix just did, what the Umbrella Academy, which is another graphic novel superhero thing. I don't know how deep that well is for really quality content in that superhero realm. But once you take Marvel and DC and you've got smaller independent, areas, but is there enough of that? I just hope they are able to perhaps diversify while maintaining the quality of shows like Game of Thrones, Westworld, and they've had some other limited series things that have done really well for them. So I just hope they can maintain the quality as they sort of seek to increase the volume of their content.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of streaming services, did you hear about Steven Spielberg's comments about Netflix and his push to block it from Oscars?
No, I did not hear about.
He's
Spielberg Netflix tantrum.
He's
What is this?
actively campaigning the Academy to have Netflix-backed films removed from consideration. He's been pretty outspoken about Netflix for a while, getting into the theatrical market because it's not their focus. Their focus is streaming. But I mean, Netflix is playing by the rules. They are they're doing their limited releases in New York and LA for whatever the amount of time is. I think it's 1 or 2 weeks. And because of that, they're getting into the Oscar consideration. He says that they should be considered for Emmys, and that's it. And he feels pretty strongly about it, and he's going to be bringing it up at the next Academy Board of Governors meeting to push. But he's getting a lot of pushback from a lot of younger people. Ava DuVernay, who she won her Oscar.
Oh,
She
yeah.
got an Oscar nomination for a Netflix documentary, 13th.
Yes.
She is up in arms. She said, this is a Board of Governors meeting and regular branch members can't be there. But I hope if this is true that you'll have filmmakers in the room or read statements from directors like me who feel differently. And yeah, a lot
Wow.
of people are coming out against Spielberg about his attitude here, and calling him a crybaby, and pointing out the fact that the old system needs to be disrupted. Netflix is providing opportunities for a far more diverse group of filmmakers than the studios are, and it's really interesting. I mean, I get his perspective. A movie, the Academy Awards are celebrating that theatrical experience, but it is their rule. A couple weeks in limited engagement in New York and LA is enough. And if Netflix is playing by the rules, who are we to stop them? And if it means that the focus needs to shift a little bit, then maybe that's what we need. But I don't know. It's that big struggle that people are having with Roma, and I'm curious to see where this is going to go.
Yeah, I've never really understood this bias against Netflix, because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there are many smaller films that got released in New York and LA, never, growing up in the Midwest, never came to any theaters near me, would be possibly nominated for Oscars, particularly, documentaries. So my chance to see them, rent them at the video store. How is that different from Netflix? And I guess perhaps the issue is the intent for the smaller films back then was that maybe they would get picked up for wider distribution, and Netflix basically is doing this to meet the criteria, but their intent is really to distribute through their service, and they throw in. But again, you can't start splitting hairs about that, because ultimately for the audience, I love the fact that Netflix does this, because this film gets a chance to play in the big theaters, but if it doesn't get that wider theatrical release, more and more people could see it. I don't know how many years I was always like, well, I would like to be able to vote on this category, but where am I ever going to see these documentaries?
Yeah. Right.
Never. They never, so, why are those more valid for Oscar consideration? Oh, because you happen to be in New York and LA, so you get the opportunity to see them, but for 95% of the rest of the country, they don't. Netflix is giving people that opportunity. So I just, Amazon, is also, I guess it's distribution model, because Amazon backs a lot of films that get theatrical releases, but because, why is Amazon not?
Oh, I'm sure they are. I just don't know if
sure.
they've
Yeah.
managed to secure the awards consideration that Netflix has. But I feel like actually, that's wrong. What was the movie that came out a couple years ago with Casey Affleck and Michelle? Manchester by the Sea.
Manchester by
Amazon.
the Sea was Amazon Studios, but I guess because that did a typical theatrical release.
Sure. No, and I guess that's the model Amazon's been taking, is they'll do the theatrical release for a bit before it's just on theirs.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting issue, and it will be interesting to see where things shake up. I will say I did find it odd that the 13-hour OJ Made in America, which was a fantastic documentary, ESPN did release that theatrically, so people could check it out, which is nuts. But and it won because it's an amazing documentary, but also because it has so much meat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to compete when you're an hour and a half documentary versus a 13-hour documentary. There's just a lot of meat in it. But it's again, I would argue that they probably weren't completely. That's not what the rules intended, but it worked in their case. So who knows? But speaking of Oscars and Marvel news, Black Panther did walk away with three Oscar wins that were pretty historic. It had 7 nominations and it won 3. It won for Best Score, which I think Ludwig Göransson did some fantastic music for that. That has it just has a real nice feel to it, with a lot of the kind of the African themes and the instrumentation that he brought in from different people in Africa. Plus, you had Ruth Carter winning an Oscar for Best Costume Design, becoming the first African-American woman to win in the category. And you also had Hannah Beachler, who got an Oscar for Best Production Design. She was the first woman of color to win for the category, and the first African-American to ever be recognized with a nomination.
No, I was really excited to see it get the costume design and production design, because really that was one thing I took away from that viewing, is creating a whole new world. In the Marvel universe, I guess you've got Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's sci-fi. But to me, it reminded me of like Lord of the Rings. Like, you're creating a whole culture and history of Wakanda, and getting that communicated in a film where you've got so many other things going on. It was something that just really stood out, of just how well defined the different tribes were, everything to that. I was so thrilled to see it walk away with those awards.
And not to shortchange the animation category, but also for Marvel, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse walked away Best Animated Picture.
That, to me, that walking into that was one that I knew without a doubt that was a certainty on that one. I looked, there were so many other things that were up in the air for various reasons. That one I said, I know this is going to take it. There's just no competing in this category. That was by far the best animated film of the year. Everything else, I going in, I thought Glenn Close was going to be a lock for that, and was surprised because it was several years ago she got nominated for Alfred Dobbs, and it's like the Academy saying we want to recognize the work that you've done, we're going to nominate, and doesn't get it. So I guess we're counting on a Lifetime Achievement Award for Glenn Close sometime down the road, unless there's another Oscar-worthy performance that she's going to knock out.
Did you hear? Because I think because of her the popularity with her award nomination, and just kind of her name having such buzz again right now, the musical version of Sunset Boulevard, which she did on Broadway to such acclaim, has been greenlit, and so she's moving forward with that. So maybe that will be her chance.
Maybe that will.
I've always loved Glenn Close. She's just always been one of my favorites. And we actually, my wife and I started watching The Wife the other night. We started too late, so we didn't make it very far, but I've been really enjoying it so far, and I'm looking forward to checking out the rest of it. Any other things that you were excited about or disappointed with as far as the Oscars go?
The Oscars, like I said, there was a lot where I felt it could go either way. I guess the biggest disappointment for me was to not see Paul Schrader get an Oscar for First Reformed. I watched that, I think, Saturday, the day before the Oscars, and was just, it's an amazing movie. One of the best films I'd seen. I don't know how it didn't get a nomination for Best Picture, but just a really strong script to that. Just amazing film. And, Raging Bull, Taxi Driver. I mean, he is a talented writer that has not been recognized. And there's so many issues I have with Green Book and all of that. So this was one where I thought this is somebody that's put in his time that is of quality, and the Academy's not recognized. It was very disappointing.
I really found First Reformed to be very powerful, but it was a film that I was like, oh man, by the time I got to the end of it, I'm like, wow, it was a difficult watch, and certainly I think that's something to say with Paul Schrader is he makes challenging films, and First Reformed was challenging, but it was a quality production. I will definitely give you that. So it is a shame that the things that do end up winning in these situations, sometimes it's always a surprise to see how things play out. Not only did we end up with getting Green Book winning in this category, but also Best Picture. A lot of disappointment there. I personally would have rather seen The Favorite win for Best Original Screenplay. I really enjoyed kind of that, but I can totally see why First Reformed likely should have won, especially knowing the history of the Best Original Screenplay category, how it often picks the winner that is kind of the more challenging of the films, and then awards like Best Director, like the more favorite, like Pulp Fiction versus Forrest Gump is the one that initially comes to my mind. So to that end, it would have been nice to see First Reformed win, if for no other reason than to say, Paul, you've done a lot of crazy stuff, and here's an Oscar for it. I will say, though, I don't know if you've seen the film that he did prior to this, Dog Eat Dog. I watched that one, and wow, was that a pile of garbage. That was Nicolas Cage, Willem Dafoe. Now, technically, he didn't write it. It was based on a novel. Somebody else adapted it, and then Schrader just directed it. But it was, just complete trash. Skip it at all costs.
Okay, yeah, I
just watch First Reformed again.
I'll say I know his stuff is spotty, and I've seen a few. I haven't. It's not like I'm a huge Paul Schrader fan. I haven't seen everything that he's written, but looking through at what he's gotten writing credit on, I mean, as I said, you got Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Mosquito Coast is another one of my favorites from.
Well, that's an adaptation,
back
also,
then.
Right?
Yeah, it's an adaptation. Oh, that's true. Yeah, off of the novel. But yeah, there are other things in there. I never saw his he didn't write the Cat People remake. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the 90s. Again, spotty, but this one to me just really stood out as something of quality. And for me, Green Book was just very much well, go listen to our film board episode. Hear what we say about Green Book.
Yeah.
But again, this is movies are the Oscars always of its time, and it's always interesting to go back 10 years and look at what films endure and which films won that have been largely forgotten in that time. So that's again something that history may look differently on Green Book 10, 15 years from now, and some of these other films may endure much.
Have you
better.
read, I think it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who talked about Green Book. Have you read his comments on it?
No,
I haven't read it. I just saw somebody commenting on it, and basically the long and the short of it is that the African-American community, they have seen this story play out time and time again with this type of relationship portrayed in films. And he says, because of that, it's actually more important to tell it from the white person's perspective, because you end up getting to see that change. If it was told from the black person's perspective, it would just feel like more of the same, like this is how it always is, and it would feel more frustrating. So it was an interesting perspective that I hadn't thought of. I do need to actually find the thing that he said, to read it, to see how much I agree. But it's something that I have seen passed around on the internet a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll have to take a look at that.
Well, should we do trailers? And for anyone tuning in who's listening, you might notice that Pete had to step away. He had some family issues come up, so it's just Steve and I now.
This makes my list easier.
Less competition.
but yes, but trailers. You've got the red band.
I got the red band rule.
Yes.
Neil Marshall, I think, is a really interesting director. He hasn't always made great stuff, but he's made some really great stuff, and he's made some stuff that I think he puts an interesting spin on things, even if I don't end up liking them. His new take on Hellboy, which is coming out, and that's my red band trailer. It's the new Hellboy trailer that's coming out later this year. I'm interested to see what he's going to do with this one. I was never a big fan of Guillermo del Toro's films in this franchise. I think del Toro often makes really interesting films that have a lot of really interesting things to look at and interesting characters, but I rarely, if ever, have been completely in love with any of his films. And I think that holds true with the Oscar, the picture he won Best Picture with, and I think that certainly holds true with his Hellboy films. And so I'm always frustrated with Del Toro. Knowing that Neil Marshall is doing this, I think it'll give me, at least, maybe not the fans of Del Toro's Hellboy films, it'll give me something to bite into and a little more of a taste of something interesting. It's they've shifted it to be an R-rated reboot, and certainly having the Red Band allows them to kind of play around with that. And I'm really curious to see what they do with this. I think an R-rated story makes sense for a film where basically a demon from hell is your protagonist. And I'm curious to see what they do with this story. You've got David Harbour as Hellboy here, Mila Jovovich as the antagonist Nimue, the Queen of Blood. Ian McShane's in it, Sasha Lane, Daniel Day Kim, Thomas Hayden Church. Sophie Okonedo is in it, Brian Gleason. It's an interesting cast, and I'm curious to see what they do with it. And knowing that it's R, knowing that I think that I can't remember if it's Mike Mignola who said it's the bloodiest that they've ever made one of these films. I'm curious to see it. What'd you think?
Yeah, the trailer, I had mixed feelings about this because it looks like it's I don't want to say silly, but it is definitely embracing more of the comedy that I'm seeing in this. And I know that's part of what I recall from, Del Toro's Hellboy, particularly the attitude of the character, but it just seemed like it's embracing full comic book type of, we can do all kinds of things. I'm concerned about the scale of stuff because it seems like ever since, I don't know, The Hobbit, Battle of Five Armies, it's like, how large scale can we make things? And it becomes so, for me, overwhelming that the scale of like, how is Hellboy going to stop armies of, millions of demons or whatever? But I am intrigued with this. I like the look of it. I like David Harbour in this. There's little things like when the scene that they show where they're raising Hellboy out of the pit, the Nazis wearing like the 3D glasses with one blue lens and one red lens. And I thought, okay, I don't know how to take this. Is this a movie that's, really self-aware of itself? It's embracing this. I don't know, but I did enjoy, I didn't love, Del Toro's. I did enjoy them. I didn't have any, issues with them. I thought, yeah, they were fine and I enjoyed watching them. This one, that's what I'm expecting. I'm going to go see it. I'll enjoy it. It won't be my favorite of the year, but I think the cast looks really interesting. It looks beautiful, gorgeous. Yeah, we'll see. I'm sort of riding the fence on this one because I feel like it could go either way. See, that's written by Andrew Cosby, and this is, I guess, what sort of plays into the comedy piece. He was a creator of a TV show, I think it was on Sci-Fi Channel, called Eureka. Yeah, so which has, it was a smart, sci-fi show, but definitely, rooted there in comedy. So I interested to see how well he balances that in Hellboy, that we get the action that everybody wants out of this. But still, are we in the R-rated, comedy territory that, Deadpool has sort of forged that path, allowing for the blood and the gore, but still being funny in moments. Yeah,
right. So I think they're going to play that up nicely. And, I don't know. I think it's going to end up being a fun film. It may not end up being great. I may not care for it any more than I do the Del Toro versions of this story. But I think it's going to be an interesting one, and with Neil Marshall at the helm, I think it could have some interesting things to do. So yes. That's Hellboy. It's going to be opening in the U.S. April 12th, 2019. So it's it's right around the corner,
not too far away. Yeah, okay. It's interesting that we've. What I would normally think of those summer movies are creeping into the springtime a little bit more earlier. I guess we can blame Marvel for that.
I feel like that goes
sort of just broke open.
I feel like it even goes back to like The Matrix, which opened in April. It's been something that they've been playing. Actually, that opened very end of March 31st. They've been playing with that for quite a while, trying to find new windows that they could possibly exploit.
Right.
And but yeah, Marvel certainly has been pushing the bounds on it lately.
Yes. All right.
What do you got?
What have I got? I guess, because the first form, I'm feeling in an Ethan Hawke kind of mood. I don't know. I didn't know what to make of this one. Ethan Hawke has sort of got this. Maybe it's because of what he was doing in Boyhood, where he had that going on the side. He was always, seemed to be involved in these like little smaller projects, fun things. And this to me sort of falls right in that. This is called Stockholm, and it's the strange story of the infamous 1973 hostage crisis in Stockholm, where we get the phrase Stockholm Syndrome. But we've got Numi and Ethan Hawke and Mark Strong. So we've got Ethan and Mark as these, Americans robbing this bank, and it's a full-on comedy crime movie. I'm always intrigued by movies that adapt, true events and maybe have a little bit of fun with that, particularly if it's something that people, I think they're branding this as, the Stockholm Syndrome. We're going to tell you the story behind it. How factually accurate this is, I will have some doubts about, but I think it's interesting to see this story being told because everybody is aware of the concept, but what really happened. And I think it's intriguing. There's a few moments in the trailer where the bank tellers realize that the police aren't telling the whole truth. So that I think that lends towards the sympathies they have for these the bank robbers. But this one just looked like a lot of fun. Wasn't anything I expected, and I always enjoy Ethan Hawke when he's not playing so serious. I like to see him sort of hamming it up, having a little bit of fun here. This is written and directed by Robert Boudreau, and I am not familiar with any of his other work. He's done just directed a few other things, worked with Ethan Hawke on another film, but this is he's writer-director. It's coming out in April at the Tribeca Film Festival. No other release dates for that. So this is one that could end up not getting a theatrical release, heading straight into streaming. It has that feel to it. I don't see this as one that people are going to be showing up, by the thousands for, but it looks like just a fun little movie that I would enjoy watching on a Saturday afternoon. That's what I'm hoping to get out of this one.
It's interesting. Looking at Ethan Hawke's career, we always say he's like one of the busiest men in Hollywood, and I swear that's always true because like this previous film he did with Robert Boudreau back in 2015, Born to Be Blue, a reimagining of jazz legend Chet Baker's musical comeback in the late 60s. I never even heard of that film before.
Right, exactly.
I swear that boy is busy. This was kind of like the interesting shift in tone with what's going on in Hellboy. This kind of is the same, where it's like this bank robbery. It's this heist film, but they make it look so funny. Like they're really amping up the quirkiness of the story. Yes, and it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I and they emphasize that even in kind of the text that comes up. It's I can't remember what it said, but it's like the craziest story you've ever heard about the famous hostage crisis or something like that.
Right.
And it's interesting. I don't know anything about the actual case that the phrase Stockholm Syndrome came from. So the fact that they're telling this story, I find really interesting, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing this one, even if it may. It's one of those ones where I hope it's interesting. I hope it's good, but I'm more curious just to kind of see the story now because they're portraying it in such an interesting way.
Yes, exactly. Well, we'll see. Where it ends up. If it maybe gets one of those smaller theatrical releases, but Ethan Hawke, I haven't seen everything, but usually I'm at least entertained by the things that the projects he chooses to be in. And sometimes there's, pleasant surprises like Predestination. Yeah.
Or First Reformed.
Yeah. Or First Reformed. Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. And that one didn't have a release date, as I recall, right?
No, it's just Tribeca, and then
that's Tribeca last
sometime
year.
2019. Oh, was it last year? Oh, okay. So it says April 2019.
There you go.
Yeah, that's or sometime 2019. So
we shall see.
All right.
All right, then. Well, it's time for our lists. This week we are looking at, Rocky Balboa is the film we're looking at. And we threw the options out to the group, and apparently our options were not very exciting because it was not a high voting turnout this time. The options were franchises rekindled, coming out of retirement, or franchises with a return to quality. Very few votes, but coming out of retirement is the one that ended up winning. And so here we are talking about movies that feature somebody coming out of retirement. Would you like to kick it off?
And well, it makes it easier now that Pete's
I know,
not
right?
here, because there were some there I'm like, he's going to take that one. He might take that one. I've got some room to play in. I'm going to start with one that caught me by surprise. It was one that I thought, oh well, I'll check that out. I think it was like on Netflix. I'll see what this is like. I don't know. It's one that I remember being in theaters, but not one that I rushed out to see, and really enjoyed it more than I thought. It's not a perfect film. It's got some issues. And this is 2015's film, The Intern, with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway and Rene Russo. And the, idea is, Robert De Niro plays a man who is now retired and is looking to do something, and he takes a job as an intern in a little startup, run by millennials. So we have a whole, all that comedy of the fish out of water, the, experienced businessman, coming out of the business world, suit and tie, and this is the way you do things, and walking into the, open workspace and, all those things. And we've got, sort of that friction between how he does things and not understanding this younger generation. But I really enjoyed it. It was, I think, a little overly long at 2 hours. But I really had a lot of fun with this one.
That's one I never saw. It piqued my curiosity enough.
Check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one that I still probably would like to catch at one point. I just haven't managed to.
A solid 7.1 on the IMDb star meter.
Look at that. I'm a little torn because now I've got so many choices. I was relying on some of them being being stolen. So now I have to figure out which one to start with.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a Tony Scott film that I think I really surprised me because I thought it looked kind of just like a dumb action movie when I saw the trailer, but I actually ended up having a lot of fun with it. It is his 1998 film Enemy of the State that he did with Will Smith and Gene Hackman and Jon Voight, Academy Award winning actress Regina King. And it's a super fun movie. We have Will Smith as a character who inadvertently gets entangled in this spy situation because somebody drops something into his bag and he ends up with it. And now he's on the run. Lo and behold, he ends up connecting with Gene Hackman's character, who is very much a kind of almost like a retired version of what you would expect his character from The Conversation to have grown into. Kind of this paranoid guy who's almost like living off the grid away from the government. And he has to kind of come out of retirement, I guess you could say, to help Will Smith's character kind of get through this whole situation. And I had so much fun with this movie. It was a blast, and it's one that I certainly look forward to revisiting at some point. So that's my first one, Enemy of the State.
That's a good one, and I have not seen that one in a long time, and that's one where, like, everybody is in that movie. I mean, everybody.
Jake Busey, Barry Pepper, Gabriel Byrne.
Oh, yeah. No, a very young Jack Black, as I recall. I don't
that
one.
That,
this one was a lot of fun. Very much that espionage type of thing. So I loved seeing Gene Hackman in this. This is one that's probably worth revisiting. I'm hoping it holds up after 20 years and doesn't feel too dated. I think some of the technology is going to probably appear like really clunky and awkward compared to what we have nowadays. But just the concept behind it was a lot of fun. Yeah, had a great time with that one.
Definitely.
Good pick. Did not think about that one. I said, Gene Hackman's been retired for so long. There haven't been a lot of Gene Hackman movies. But when you think of somebody coming out of retirement, that's the type of you're going to cast a Gene Hackman, that's for sure.
Right.
Or with my next pick, you're gonna cast a Bruce Willis in what Pete likes to call the geriatric action movie Red. My second pick. This was one that I just loved how much fun this cast seemed to be having in this movie when you've got Bruce Willis and Helen Mirren and John Malkovich, Morgan Freeman. Just this whole idea of a guy who's retired and getting pulled back in and getting his old team back together. And this one and its sequel, I just had a lot of fun with both of these films. That's my second pick.
Another one I haven't seen.
You have not seen either one? Oh.
I know. I've somehow missed it. It's another one that I was curious about. I'm certainly not trying to avoid it. I'd be interested in checking it out. I just haven't managed to.
Yeah, PG-13 action, with a little bit of comedy.
It's got such a great cast.
Yes.
Another one with a really great cast.
Yes.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of fun with that one. Okay. Put it on your list.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out what to. I'm going to throw this one in there. I am not going to say this is a favorite of mine, but I think that there was some really interesting stuff done with the film. It is the adaptation of Watchmen that Zack Snyder did in 2009. And I know there are several iterations of it. I've only seen the theatrical version. I didn't watch the director's cut or the 9-hour version that features all of the animated story of the.
It's not 9
the
hours.
pirate ship. That's isn't it?
I
heard it was something crazy.
It's like 4 hours. I think. I don't think it's 9 hours.
The director's cut is like 3 or 4 hours. But then didn't they do a cut that has the animated story cut into it too? That is like a 9-hour version. I don't remember.
I know it's longer because yes, they tried to put everything together so to sort of replicate the experience of reading the graphic novel, which has in addition the sort of the slave ship graphic novel that one of the characters is reading. Plus you've got excerpts from
the Black Freighter.
Yeah, so you've got that, and then there's the autobiography from one of the characters that you've got excerpts from. Let's see. The ultimate cut brings it from 162 minutes to 218 minutes. And it interweaves the animated Black Freighter short in there. So,
So it's not 9 hours.
9 hours. But
I don't know why I have it in my head all this time.
No, but
I'm like,
because you don't want that much Zack Snyder. And that's a lot of Zack Snyder.
Yeah, so 3.5 hours is much more doable. I should check that out at some point. I'd be very curious.
I did watch the director's cut just last year because I was curious. I picked up used copy of the DVD that had the director's cut. I was intrigued and interested in seeing that ultimate cut that put everything together, but I think Zack Snyder said he prefers the director's cut. He put the ultimate cut together for like super fans, but doesn't feel that it really works, pacing and all that, and that's why he has the director's cut, which is I think added like 20, 25 minutes. And I saw the original cut and then I saw the director's cut. It had been many years in between, but the director's cut, I felt, the movie there's a lot of story. I did enjoy the director's cut, and I couldn't tell you unless I had a list in front of me what the differences were. There may have been one or two extra scenes, but it may have just been extending some scenes a little bit, giving them a little bit more space for characters, or something like that. But that's
right.
So who's the character that's coming out of retirement in this one?
It is Night Owl. Night Owl had retired. Daniel Dreiberg.
That's right.
He had retired, and because of this whole thing with the superheroes getting knocked off, Rorschach brings him back in to start getting his costume back on. And I just love that Patrick Wilson, who plays him, put on 25 pounds to kind of give him that retired overweight superhero look. It was great. So it's such a fascinating film to watch. I love reading the graphic novel.
Yeah.
I do need to watch the film again, but it's not perfect, but it is really interesting.
Yes, it is.
And that's my next. So, all right.
Okay.
We're down to the last slot.
Oh, where do I go? Because when I'm building a list, there's some of the obvious ones, and then I try to dig stuff out, perhaps. I will go with, since Pete's not here, and I assume we could probably do our what we think Pete would have picked list.
We should.
Well,
Enemy of the State was probably on his. I probably stole that from him.
I'm going to finish with one that I remember seeing in the theater, and this just, I have not seen it in a long time, but it just hit me as like a perfect film at a perfect time to reinvent a genre, and just an amazing cast. Unforgiven is just one of those. I have not seen it, but every memory I have of that movie is just, it wowed me from beginning to end with the performances, reinventing the Western, a movie where, typically you have good guys and bad guys, and we're in moral gray area of who's, everybody's got some corruption in them. Just blew me away when I saw it in the theater. And for me, that's my number one coming out of retirement film.
That's the first steal.
All right.
About to do that one too. Yes, such a great movie. It's really, I think, one of Eastwood's best, and it has just great performances all around. Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman again. It's really solid.
Yes.
Solid production. Well, then that puts me in a spot where I'm trying to pick one of these two, and I guess I will go with this one. It is Blade Runner, which is also just one of the greats. This is just a brilliant sci-fi film. And true enough, Deckard is a former police officer, and he is brought in by Gaff to his former supervisor, Bryant. And he has to come out of retirement and go back to working as a Blade Runner to capture these 4 replicants that are illegally here on Earth. And it's just always been one of my favorites. Such a great film. I think that Ridley Scott really set the bar pretty high with this film as just a masterpiece of science fiction cinema. So that's my final pick, Blade Runner.
That's right. And what does he do with the replicants? He retires them.
Right. And also, I love that there's that ambiguity. Like,
yes.
Is he a replicant himself?
Oh, yeah. Now, both those, Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, 2 just solid performances there. Perfect.
Amazing film.
All right.
All right. What do you have any backups you want to throw out there?
I had my, my backup, when you make Keanu Reeves come out of retirement, you get a whole new franchise in John Wick. And for me, that was a nice transition point, I think, in Keanu's career of playing the more grizzled, retired guy, although he's not that old, but, clearly world weary. So I had that one. And then I had a sort of tricky one, which was Logan Lucky, which is actually Steven Soderbergh's return from retirement, because he said he did that, what was the one that he did for HBO? The piano
Versace one?
Not Liberace. Yeah.
Liberace, Versace.
Yeah, after Liberace, that he said he was going to retire. Then he did, a few little things for cable, but this was his sort of return from retirement on the cinematic screen, Logan Lucky. So that was my
nice.
Other. What did you have?
I had a few options. I had Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy when
yes,
they bring Smiley back in.
Yes.
Kill Bill Volume 1 when the bride gets Hattori Hanzo to come out of retirement to make her the sword.
Yes.
And then, of course, how could you not have a list of coming out of retirement without including Star Wars? Because Obi-Wan Kenobi has to jump back in and help Luke out.
Yes, he does. Oh, goodness.
Yes.
All right.
So
we gotta up our game for this next list, because this one people were not motivated. We gotta inspire them with some good choices.
Well, we are looking at Creed. We're continuing the Rocky franchise, and we're doing a jump out of Rocky's life, and we're jumping into the life of the son of his former opponent, Apollo Creed. We're looking at the story of Adonis Creed, and it's going to be a fun one to talk about. So, I was thinking that we could do one that is like, I think it would actually be impossible coming up with lists for it, but sequels that follow
a different
characters who who weren't in the previous films. And like the only one that came to me was the Fast and Furious, like that new one that they have with Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it's kind of a sequel. It's in that same world, but it's different characters. So I don't know.
It's a spin-off sequel with
Yeah,
you get those on TV
exactly.
a lot, not so much in films.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the Jeffersons.
Yes.
Or Frasier.
Frasier. Yes. That would be challenging because, I can't think of many. I'm sure there are some really obscure ones out there where some character was a minor character and we get a film. But yeah, I don't know that we're going to get a lot of that. I've been trying to think what we would do with this. Do we have a list that maintains that connection to the Rocky franchise and its role there? Or do we just look at this as a film by itself and say, okay, what is this one about? And try and come up with things, because it's a really unique place that this has in this, in the world of Rocky.
Yeah. It is really interesting where the protagonist we followed for 6 films is now a supporting character.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting shift, but it's a really hard thing to make lists of. We could certainly look at, we could do films dealing with illegitimate children.
Oh, okay. Yes. I think that give us something easy, but I think that works.
That gives us some interesting things to look at. Let's see what else. We have his girlfriend has progressive hearing loss. We could do characters with hearing issues. It's kind of a random one, but it's an option.
Oh yeah, because this is so, because it's sort of like a reboot, because it's, again, you've got the young boxer type of, we're going to tell that story again.
Well, we could do. It's not a perfect one because so far we've had 2 directors in this franchise, John G. Avildsen and Sylvester Stallone. Mm-hmm. But we could do new directors to an established franchise. Is that something that would be easy or difficult? I don't know.
So you've got a franchise that's established by one director, and you've got somebody else that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect because technically this has had 2 directors in the franchise so far, but certainly Stallone was always involved, even when it was Avildsen, like from the beginning.
Yes, I think this is definitely a different perspective. Yeah, let's throw that in the mix. I don't know what we're I don't know what we're gonna get, but
I don't either. I don't know.
We'll see. And because of that, that's what everybody's going to vote for. So we'll
probably. All right, and then for the final pick, let's see, what else do we have here? We've got is passing the torch something?
Oh, I mean, okay, yeah.
We could do that kind of.
Yes, I think that is actually a really good option.
All right, well, that's it. Okay. Illegitimate children, new directors to an established franchise, and passing the torch.
Excellent choices.
Yeah, I think that will work. And then we'll have to see what we come up with for the final week, Creed 2.
Okay.
But let's worry about that next week.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's it for the Sat Mat today, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And thanks for all of your support. We really appreciate it. And get your votes in for next week's Sat Mat poll. We look forward to more conversations about these movies. And Steve, thanks as always.
And thank you to you as well. Top of the morning to you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Hondo.